I told you that baby boys are a lot more sensitive than baby girls, that they cry more, they're harder to soothe, they're much more sensitive to their environment, especially to their mothers, and that they also coo and laugh way more than baby girls do. But that all changes by the time they enter kindergarten. So let's talk for a minute about what happens, how men and women experience and express their emotions, and what that means for both of you. Hello, I'm Dr. Debi, and I've been helping men, women, and couples grow together for more than 25 years. Now it's your turn to learn what I learned and taught as a couples counselor and university professor. This is your personal development podcast packed with instant encouragement and practical tips. This is a safe place where women are valued and men are respected. We talk about biology, socialization, behavior, emotions, communication, and connection, because men and women are different. Always have been, always will be, and that's a very good thing. Here we have a happy pair of toddlers playing in the sandbox at the playground. I want you to imagine that the little boy does something to upset the little girl. Let's say he reaches over and takes her blue shovel. Well, she's probably going to protest, and she's going to protest loudly. Now, the parents or the caregivers that are nearby are going to be pretty likely to step in quickly and tell him he has to give it back to her and shame him for that and comfort the little girl. Now, let's turn it around the other way. The little girl reaches over and takes the little boy's orange shovel. What happens? Well, research shows that the parents or the caregivers are more likely to just watch or kind of pretend like they don't notice and see what the little boy will do. Now, if he gets really upset because he can't get his shovel back, he will go over to the parent or the caregiver and protest. Maybe he even has some tears. Maybe she whacked him with his orange shovel, but he's going to protest. And the first thing that's going to happen, more than likely, is those adults are going to go, "What's wrong?" And if he's crying, they'll expect him to be able to stop crying and then tell them in a reasonable tone about what the problem is. Then they're going to tell him to go solve the problem on his own. So he will have to figure out what that solution is going to be. And now he's in a dilemma because he's actually sensitive. He doesn't want to hurt the little girl. He wants to be kind to her, but he wants his shovel back. So he has to go over and negotiate this relationship on his own without any direction from his parents. Now, that sounds kind of harsh because the little boy is actually way more sensitive than the little girl. She's just more expressive than he is. And when he does try to express his feelings to the adults, he gets shamed for it. He gets the responsibility thrown back in his lap to take care of things. Now, if that sounds like that's pretty rough, you got to keep in mind that that little boy, if these two were exactly the same age, and it looks like they're close, but if they were exactly the same age and the same size, he would still be stronger than she is. Because boys have greater muscle mass. They develop very differently than little girls do. So if you think about it, if he doesn't learn to control his emotions, he either doesn't know how to use his strength because he's not going to assert himself if the parents jump in and take care of it for him, or if he resorts to acting out, is what we often call it, especially if it's a little boy, then he might get rough with her. He might reach over and jerk away his shovel and whack her with it or whatever, scream at her, yell at her. But he is in the process of being trained to control his emotions. So what's the bottom line here? Well, he learns to control his emotions, he learns to control his behavior, and she learns to depend on someone else to take care of her problems for her, to help her get the result that she wants. And so oftentimes she doesn't learn how to step up in a way that's appropriate, using her emotions to get what she needs. At the same time, he's not sure what to do because he's been tossed into the deep end of the pool, if you will. So this gets really confusing even at a very young age. And by the time they enter kindergarten, it's really interesting what happens. I actually had a kindergarten teacher tell me this one time. There's one thing you can always count on. This is what she said to me. One thing you can always count on. In kindergarten, little boys are unruly and little girls are bossy. The little girls are always telling the boys what to do. They learned it by watching other people tell them what to do and what not to do, because they're big and they're rowdy and they like rough and tumble play. And there's just so many things that are so different about boys. Now, I've had people say to me, we need to change how we treat little boys. And I've actually asked the men in my program what they think about that. Should the little boys be treated more like the little girls are treated? Should we change the way we socialize men, in other words? And their answer, without exception so far, has been no. We actually do need to teach our boys to have self-control. I thought that was interesting, and that came from the men themselves, that they really see that as one of the benefits of the way that we raise boys. I think on the other hand, if we need to do any changing at all, I'm going to say it's probably we need to teach the little girl how to ask for what she wants, but to do it in a way that doesn't demean other people and doesn't make her the center of attention. But, that happens in a different way for little girls. I know I've got a granddaughter that can be quite a little diva at times, and her parents call her out on it, so she doesn't get away with it. There's lots of ways to raise kids for sure. No, I'm not talking about your upbringing or anyone particular. We're looking at overall what happens. And this is the big picture. It's what comes out in the research. Now, let's fast forward that, say 50 to 60 years and see what happens. This couple is obviously very upset with one another, and they clearly do not know how to talk their way through it. More than likely, this pattern has been going on for a very long period of time. More than likely, he's doing stuff that she doesn't like, and she tries to tell him about it, and he just tries to shut her out because she doesn't stop. And the more she talks about it, the harder he tries to shut her out. And finally, she's just given up, and she's really angry because he won't listen to her, and he's really angry because she won't stop talking. And this is really all about the way they've learned to handle their emotions. I want you to keep that in mind. Some marital research actually took couples and put them in an apartment for the weekend and observed their behavior. Now, they turned off the cameras and everything from, like 10 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know the exact time, but the couple had privacy. In other words, they weren't being watched 24 hours a day. But during the day, they observed their interactions. And one thing that they noticed was very often when there was a disagreement, one partner would look really upset. The other partner often looked very calm. And it's like, well, what's going on there? Why is that person always so calm? Obviously, there's an argument going on here. So what could be happening? So they devised a little experiment. So they took two chairs and they put them face to face, had the man sit in one and the woman sit in the other. They hooked them up to measuring devices. So they're measuring their heart rate and their breathing. And they even put a little wiggle meter on the chair so they could tell if there was any shifting going on in the chair. And then they said, talk about something you don't agree on. As soon as they started talking, took a few minutes, but oftentimes the woman would look very upset. But almost instantly, the man's heart rate would go up and it would shoot up very, very quickly. He still looked cool and calm, but on the inside, all the bells and whistles were going off. He was in distress. He was in the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And he chose, instead of fighting, just to be quiet, just stay in that freeze mode. So he's avoiding the situation. 9 times out of 10, that's what happens with couples when they start this pattern. One person pursues, the other person withdraws or tries to be quiet, but they're not as calm as they look. Inside, things are really not going well for them. I want you to keep that in mind when we talk about conflict and conflict resolution. But for now, I want you to realize that just because a person looks calm on the outside does not mean they're calm on the inside. I know I've said that about 3 times, but that's because I really want to drive that point home. Okay, with that background information in your pocket, we'll start with his experience. Remember, men are more sensitive from birth. Baby boys cry more than baby girls. They also are harder to soothe. In addition, baby boys also laugh and coo more than baby girls. But by the time a boy enters kindergarten, most of his emotional expression has disappeared. Notice I said the word expression, not experience. He's still experiencing those feelings. They do not go away. They're part of his biological makeup. But his expression of those has changed dramatically. We've talked about why. And here's the bottom line, though. He's already learned the number one rule of being a man. by the time he gets in kindergarten, which is don't be a girl. And those vulnerable emotions are seen as more feminine. As an adult, he still experiences every emotion intensely. However, he's learned that a healthy human being controls his emotions at all times. And to him, that fact just makes sense. His experience and his training can lead him to question her maturity or her mental health. He doesn't understand that her emotional expression serves a healthy purpose. So far, I've made it sound like that all those emotions are not a good thing in women. And that's not true. That's not what I mean. Remember, I don't favor one sex over the other. We're just very different. And we're going to get into more about the purposes of her emotional expressions, especially to her husband, as we get into the communication styles. So bear with me on this, okay? Her experience is that a healthy human being openly expresses her emotions, especially with somebody that they're really close to or they want to be close to. His silence just seems wrong to her. And it's a little scary. What's he thinking? Why is he so quiet? Is he hiding something? Is he angry with me? Or more likely, why doesn't he understand? Maybe I should try it again. And so she ups the ante and makes another emotional plea to try to get him to listen because his silence just is not working for her at all. She doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't know what to do with her emotions. She may even begin to question his mental health status. I've had men stop me and tell me, I should say, that they think their wife has a mental health issue because she's emotional. Likewise, I've had women say he must have been traumatized as a young child because he won't ever talk about anything. He just gets quiet, and she doesn't realize that he's been trained to be quiet. He's been trained to be calm. Now, I want to say the opposite is also a possibility, that he may be more emotional than she is, or that he may be more reactive than she is. But probably, I'm just going to say the vast majority of people, it's the woman who is more emotional and the man who is more likely to shut down. Can go the other way, but more often than not, that's how it goes. At any rate, she sets out to fix that about him. This is something that's broken. I know I can fix it. And so she starts in her multiple attempts to get him to talk about what he's feeling, to basically understand her and validate her feelings and agree with what she's saying, because she sees that as normal over what he's doing, which is shutting down, tuning out. Sometimes he might actually walk out. Sometimes he might even lash out. And all of those things, all those behaviors, she sees as very dysfunctional. Those also have a purpose as well. And we'll talk more about that. Now we have a problem. Although men are more emotionally sensitive than women are, they're sensitive to different things than women are. Men are sensitive to anything that attacks their identity as men. Women don't even realize that they're doing this. They'll say things to a man that he will often describe as disrespectful, but to her, they're just having a conversation. But it comes across to him, because of his particular sensitivity, it comes across to him as disrespectful. And that is to give him advice, to repeat yourself, to tell him what to do, to give him instructions, to ask him what's wrong with him. Why are you not talking to me? You need to grow up. I mean, the list is very, very long. And things that happen that from the very small and seemingly mundane comment, benign comment, such as, why don't you fill in the blank with whatever you want. Why don't you is this the starting of the sentence? You should. Why don't you? You should. All of those things sound very emasculating to a man. On the other hand, women are sensitive to getting their feelings hurt. Our emotions are those tender feelings I was talking about. Those really are our radar for what's going on in the world around us, whether or not things are safe. And we're particularly sensitive to being alone. Being rejected or abandoned is a huge thing, because again, you go back to that idea that men are bigger, they're stronger, and that women are smaller and much more physically vulnerable. So our emotions are really highly functional for us to help us keep track of what's going on in the environment. And we can really fine-tune stuff so much that we can even sense emotional distance with a mate in a nanosecond. It's just miraculous how often that happens. I know one story that I've often told, the couple is going on their date. They've been dating for about 3 months, and she's like, oh my gosh, we've been dating 3 months. And so they get into the car to go on their date. And she says, wow, I can't believe we've been dating for 3 months. And he just goes silent. And she automatically says something's wrong. And inside, she gets this sinking feeling. Was he going to break up with me? What's happening? Why is he quiet? Why isn't he excited about this? And she worries about what he's thinking or what he's planning because he's not saying anything. And if you go inside the man's head, you realize what he's thinking is, 3 months. I think I need to get the oil changed. He's not even thinking about the relationship. It initiated the 3 month, that phrase 3 months was a marker for him that meant something entirely different. And again, we're going to talk more about that. But still, it's like, or what she said seemed to trigger his silence, which made her worry and hurt her feelings. So now she's going into this spiral and he's not even thinking about the same thing that she is. This is a problem, right? Remember this, as a result of their experience and their training, men use words to relay information and women use words to create connection. So in that example of the couple on their date, after 3 months of dating, is that he heard 3 months, that's information, but she was talking about this in a way that she wanted to create more connection. She wanted to make it into a romantic moment, an extra romantic date. So they really missed each other in that very short conversation, but it had a huge impact. And it's a pattern that they would repeat over and over again and over again. And we're going to talk more about that. What did you think? Did the information raise more questions? Do you want to learn more? Head over to A Wise Woman's Guide for show notes and links to the resources mentioned in this episode at awisewomensguide.com.